Welcome to the Progressive Democrats of LaPorte County's Candidate Forum tonight. We're featuring a discussion about criminal justice, and we're excited to have two candidates in that field with us tonight. John Lake, running for LaPorte County Prosecutor, re-election, and Andy Hynek, running for County Sheriff. I'm Deb Chubb, and I want to turn it over first to our Democratic Party County Chair, Dr. Vijay Kora, to give us a little bit of an introduction.
Deb, thank you very much. And I want to thank you. I want to thank Steve, Dahlia, all the organizers of these forums, because these forums are extremely important to get the message out and to allow people to meet our candidates. I believe we have two excellent candidates, one for prosecutor and one for sheriff. John Lake, as you all know, is up for re-election. He has served us and our county extremely well over the past 4 years. He has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of wisdom and experience. And then Andy Hynek is running for the first time. But Andy has extraordinary energy, passion to take care of this county, and he loves this county, and he and his family have been actively involved in community activities through the past several years that I have been involved in political life. I just want to mention to everyone that safety and security of a community is extremely important. And so we strongly support our law enforcement. So once Andy gets elected as sheriff, we're going to strongly support him and his team. And also, we also believe fairness in the justice system. Fairness is extremely important. And John Lake has conducted himself extremely well over the past 4 years, and after his re-election, he will continue to do that. When law enforcement issues come up, people say that are we supportive of law enforcement? Absolutely. When I was a county commissioner, and when Sheila Matias is the county commissioner right now, we have always supported law enforcement because safety and security of the community is important. But we also emphasize that accountability is important, and accountability is important not only for law enforcement, it's important for any profession, like for a medical profession. Accountability is important. So it is a balance between safety, security, supporting our law enforcement, having them keep the community safe and strong, but at the same time, we balance it with accountability. Even though the Republican Party keeps saying that they are the party of law and order, frankly, if you look at the actions of the Republican Party and some of their supporters over the last couple of years, they have attacked the Capitol Police. They have threatened FBI. They want to defund the FBI. And this doesn't appear to be a party that supports law enforcement. But I think we need strong law enforcement to keep our community safe, to keep our country safe. We definitely are going to support our Capitol Police to keep our elected officials safe. We are going to support the FBI to keep the country safe and strong. So with that quick introduction, I just want to let you know that we have a great team on the Democratic team, great candidates on the Democratic team. And two of those excellent candidates we have are John Lake for prosecutor and Andy Hynek for sheriff. With that, Deb, I'm going to turn it back to you, and looking forward to hearing this discussion.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kora. So we're going to start with just each candidate giving a 3-minute introduction of themselves, and we'll start with Andy. Now you moved around. You moved on me. Oh, why do you keep moving on me? Okay. Hang on. There we go. There's Andy. Okay. Andy, so yeah, go ahead and tell us, about yourself. Tell us about your background. Tell us why you're running.
Absolutely. Well, first off, thanks for having us. Obviously, these forums are extremely important to get our message out and for voters to know who it is that's on the ballot. So again, just as you guys did in the primary, we appreciate it, and we appreciate it in the general. With that being said, I am Andy Hynek. I've been a lifelong LaPorte County resident. I grew up on the east side of the county, attended New Prairie High School. Following graduation from high school, I enlisted in the United States Army. So I'm a veteran. I was a construction equipment operator in the military. Following my service there, I came home, went to Indiana University at South Bend. I was an intern there, and through the internship, got hired at the Sheriff's Department at 21. The first opening that was there after I turned 21, I got hired. I've spent time in every single division in the Sheriff's Department, which is one thing that sets me apart from my opponent, is that I've worked in the jail division, patrol division, detective bureau, warrants division, marshal's task force. I was a drug task force commander for several years, which is obviously very important given the current climate of the drug situation. And I'm currently the midnight patrol commander. I oversee all the operations from 10 at night till 6 in the morning of the jail and the road. I am currently active on the boards for the Boys and Girls Club, the Animal Shelter board, and the Work Release board. I live in the Rolling Prairie area, just outside Rolling Prairie, and I have a son and a daughter. And that is basically it about me.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Okay, and John, we'll do the same for you. If you could tell us about yourself and why you're running again, and
as you can tell from the big background I have, my name is Blake. So if that's too distracting, hopefully it's not. That's just a background on Zoom. My name is John Lake, and I'm your elected prosecutor. I've been serving this with honor and privilege the last 4 years. And I ask again to be able to serve a second term. But starting off, I'm a lifelong resident of LaPorte County. I grew up in Michigan City area schools, and went to Elston, then graduated from Marquette. Wasn't the smartest kid in my class. Barry McDonald, who works for me, was valedictorian. I was salutatorian. From there, I went to, and one of the significant things that really has affected my life was my dad passed away when I was 12. So I grew up most of my life without a father. Had to lead kind of my own way, but came from a large family, and thankfully I have a really good mom who got me on track. But I went to Notre Dame undergrad, graduated with honors there in '88, and then went to Notre Dame Law School. That's where I met my wife, Mary. And, we both graduated in 1991, got married, and we have raised now 7 children. And our oldest is turning 30 this year. So, very, very, we believe strongly in veterans in the military. I've got 2 captains in the Army. My second and third son are both captains. My oldest is an artist, and he's basically got a deal to bring out a game in the next 2 years with the company that does the Walking Dead series. So he's moving on his career. And then my daughter Maria just she graduated from Notre Dame and is going to Notre Dame Law School. Just started, so it's kind of interesting, her going to school. And then my daughter Annabelle is a senior at Notre Dame. So kind of Notre Dame's kind of a theme in our family, as you can kind of tell. But then my other son just started in Marquette as a freshman. And then we have a freshman in high school. So, I actually realized this yesterday when I was talking to Mary in preparation for this, that I'm 56 and I've been a prosecutor for half my life. I've been doing this for 28 years. And that's the biggest significant difference between me and my opponent, which is the most shocking thing. He came out and he said he chose to run, but now he's saying lately, if you heard him in forums, is that he didn't want to run, but no one else would. So he basically is a ballot holder, a position holder for the Republicans, so they can say vote straight ticket, because we got every office covered. But he has 0 days of experience. I'm talking days, not even minutes or hours as a prosecutor. He enters appearance 1 time on a criminal case. So I look forward to the discussion, and thank you again for this forum.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna put you both on here, and so now we've got a lot of time for questions. So I encourage anyone on here to type questions into the chat, and Dahlia will be monitoring that, and we'll ask those questions. I have a few questions I want to start with, of course, and one came over the email, and we'll start with that. And I think this is probably a question for you, John. Someone asked about expunging their record, and
Yes.
what's involved, what's the process, how long does it take? Do you have to have an attorney to do it? Can you give some guidance?
Yeah, and it's an excellent question. In fact, we are actually having an expungement workshop on September 29th from 5 to 7 p.m. at City Hall in Michigan City. Mary, who is my chief of staff, is the expert on expungements. She did them as a defense counsel. And so there's all different levels. For me, I don't have enough time to explain because there's like 8 different levels of different types of how you do expungement. So whether you had the arrest and never were charged, whether the charge was dismissed, whether you pled guilty to a misdemeanor or to a lower level felony, whether it was a higher felony, whether or not there was somebody injured, those all affect the expungement and how it takes place. But and you don't need an attorney. That's one of the purposes that we are working with the NAACP on this, to be able to facilitate people who may have criminal charges or criminal convictions on their background, which are affecting their ability to get a job. And so it's something that we've been discussing with the NAACP over the last few months, and finally got a date set today, actually, where we're able to confirm that Mary's going to go and put on that workshop. It's free. We ask anybody who really is interested in doing it. They don't have to, it's for pro se, and she'll have the forms and go through everything and explain it. So hopefully that people will be able to come out.
Great. Okay. So, and tell me that date again, just so
September 29th at City Hall in Michigan City from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We're going to be doing it in the EEOC training room, which is right, I think, down on the lower
downstairs.
Level. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to be doing, Mary's going to be doing that, and she'll have forms to share and explain the whole process and answer questions and go through it. She is the expert. I don't mess around with expungements. Anytime I get them, I give them to her, and she's the go-to person on our staff. And you'll find that there's certain things, areas that Mary and I have divided up in the office that she really concentrates: juvenile, mental health. Those are the issues, and expungements. She really works with those a lot with the public.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so Andy, so I want to ask you about jail populations, and what you think about arresting people with for possession of small amounts of marijuana and other misdemeanors, etc., shoplifting, etc., which I guess can be a felony as well. But how do you think, how will you be as a sheriff in terms of avoiding jail overcrowding and using those techniques and any other approaches you have?
Yeah, really good question. So jail overcrowding is something that we face locally, but not just locally. It's obviously a national issue, and we have to find ways to reduce the jail population and rethink things that maybe we've done for many decades and say, well, we've always done it this way, so we have to take somebody to jail, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case. Since COVID, one of the positives, I guess, if there is some positive that came out of COVID, is that we started to do summonsing much more than we did prior to COVID. Meaning, for a lot of our crimes, even though historically we would take somebody to jail or the statute says they go to jail, we simply issue them a summons and give them ample opportunity to either retain a lawyer or reach out to the prosecutor's office. And that seems to have worked favorably on the jail population. And a good example of this is our driving crimes. In Indiana, we have, in my opinion, a very complicated statute when it comes to driving while suspended. Most states, either you're suspended or you're not, and that's it. In Indiana, we have about 5 or 6 different levels of suspension, most of which by statute would require you go to jail. Well, the unfortunate situation that we see on a regular basis is, as a patrol officer, they stop somebody on the highway, they're on their way to work. So if we impound their car and take them to jail, make them pay a bond or sit there until they go in front of a judge, chances are they've lost that job and they're not doing what we want them to do in society, right? To be a functioning member of society. So we many years ago stopped taking people to jail for that, and we simply issue a summons for that. And I am absolutely in favor of doing that for, small amounts of marijuana, for shoplifting, for crimes, that we're allowed to do that. Now, obviously, there are some misdemeanors we can't do that for. Domestic battery is one. Obviously, there's the mandatory cooling off period, and in some situations, we have to remove people from the environment that they're in. Even public intoxication, although it's a very low level, I can tell you of 2 examples cases I was on in the last week where I literally begged people to find some place to go so we did not have to take them to jail. We absolutely did not want to take these folks to jail, but they were so intoxicated and they had no other place to go that we had an obligation to protect people from themselves. So in a situation like that, obviously we have to take them to jail, but absolutely we need to do more of issuing summonses, because then the chances are they can get through the system without ever spending a minute in the jail. Through the prosecutor's office, they'll have some of these alternative programs for them.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So I'm going back to I'm just going to alternate. I think that's the best way to do this. So, John, you and I talked before about your child fatality review, and I found that really interesting and effective. And I'd love it if you could tell us more about that.
Okay, and let me just first respond. Also, just respond on summonses.
Sure.
Anything that's a misdemeanor, we pretty much have authorized officers to use their discretion on that. They don't have to arrest, and it's within the officer's discretion. So everything Andy, I would just emphasize that what Andy's telling is exactly true. We're not saying you need to arrest people and bring them, because we want to avoid everything that he just said. As to our child fatality review team, statutorily, the prosecutor has to establish one. We did not have a child fatality review team during the prior administration. That was one of my promises that I made, that I was going to do it. And so we started it up, and it takes a while because there's a lot of people, different members of the group. And so in 2019, we finally got it up and established where we got enough commitment from people that would be on it to volunteer and meet. So we started reviewing cases from 2019 and 2020, and out of the first 15 fatalities, unfortunately, we had 15 fatalities from the ages of 0 to age 18 that we review, and 13 of those were due to unsafe sleep, where young infants are being put to bed, and it's something that we identified pretty quickly. It was like we as a group, and when going through these, and it can be pretty traumatic when you have to review deaths of children. And some of them are cases that involve criminal charges. Other ones are just tragedies. And so we're just trying to determine whether more investigation has to be done. Is there a better way to do this? What information can we get out to the public to try and affect this? So once we identified unsafe sleep, I started doing, I got a grant that I wrote myself and obtained money to, there's 2 things that I was trying to do for it. Was to get a suicide hotline, which is a We Tip hotline, but also acts as a crime, hotline as well. But the other thing was to do PSAs for unsafe sleep. And since November of 2020, we have not had an unsafe sleep, knock on wood, in our county. And unsafe sleep is always, you should put a baby to bed always on their back alone in a crib. And they come out with sleepers. It's totally different than the way I did it as a father, and as grandfather, you always want to put a blanket on him. You think the little baby's going to be cold. So it's a significant thing that we've done. And that's just one aspect of the office that's other than on the other side of the criminal justice. And I don't want to take too much time talking about that because I know we have a lot of questions today.
I know, I am seeing that. This is great. So, but I'm going to take moderator's prerogative here and ask one more question to Andy. I want to talk about the permitless carry law that became effective July 1st. And, just what is your opinion on that? How is it affecting your ability to, work with the public?
So I am against the permitless carry, as was every single law enforcement organization in the state of Indiana. They told our lawmakers, don't do this. It's not a political issue. Again, it was from the chiefs of police to the state police alliance, the sheriff's association, and they said, we don't care what you have to say. And the reason is, the Reader's Digest version of this is, in my opinion, the reason we need it is because tonight our deputies can go to a call where somebody's having a mental health issue, maybe some kind of a breakdown, and we transport that individual to the hospital, or we call for EMS to come take them to the hospital, and we document it in a report. And we say, John Doe had an issue, etc. We do a report on it, and maybe the person gets better, maybe they don't, but we've done at least that part of it. Then in a month, John Doe comes to apply. Previously, he would come apply for a handgun permit, and we could flag that permit for the state police to take a closer look at, because we would say, here's a report where recently this person had a mental health issue. Perhaps we shouldn't give them a permit. Let's look into this more. Now they don't have to do that. The second part of that question of how it's affected us recently, it has absolutely affected Michigan City and some of their crime more than anywhere else in the county. Just in my experience as the Midnight Commander, we've encountered several instances where we have several individuals in a car. Maybe one person isn't allowed to permit or wouldn't be allowed by permit to carry a handgun, but they are in there, and the other folks are able to carry a handgun until they have it. So it makes the enforcement very hard. It's an all-around bad law.
All right. So yeah, we just need to elect the right people, I guess. Okay, so let's look at the chat box here. You know what? In fact, there's a lot of stuff in here. Dahlia is watching it. So Dahlia, I'm going to ask you to ask one of the questions. You've been looking at them, you know them. I haven't been reading.
Okay, I'm just going to go in order. The first question is, how can a prosecutor and sheriff work together to reduce recidivism?
All right, John, why don't you go first?
Okay, I think it's very important. I consider Andy a friend, and I consider that, I look forward to working with him and being able to have a discussion about, working on criminal justice. One of the things, and this will affect it, is that the issue of having fully functioning police departments, sheriff's department, where we're not losing people constantly, and we've lost more people. We're losing more people from Michigan City and from the sheriff's department. When a police department, this affects overall the ability to affect crime, is that if you're not at capacity, you can't really do all the different functionings. So that's one aspect. But as far as recidivism goes, I look forward to creating programs with Andy, and we've talked. I'm the president of the work, the Community Corrections Board, and there's parts of that community corrections that are not being used, wings that are not open, that I really wanted to. And I started this in 2019. We started doing a drug treatment program out there, but unfortunately, the participants kind of ruined it because they were getting into other areas and just not. So they kind of ruined the program. But I'm looking forward to being able to work with Andy to come up with some programs so we can either do, that people are not, if they're sentenced to a year in jail, they're not just sitting there. It's not just wasted time. So one of our biggest issues that I think is going to affect recidivism is that we're going to be, right now we have a juvenile wellness court. It's about to get certified here in the next 2 months. It's been up and running for 2 years. That's what Mary has done with circuit court. That's going to affect recidivism because now once we finish that one and get it certified, we're moving on to the adult mental health court. So we're going to have people who aren't going to be in jail, and we're going to deal with the mental health aspect of people who actually should not be sitting in jail that need treatment, that we can deal with them. And then we have the drug issue. Our problem-solving courts are really important, and we work with those and really try and focus on people who are have addictions to put them in those programs. But if we can identify that through in getting, I know the program is getting a start up again in the jail. Phase 1 is really important through the jail. So those are just some of the things that we can work hand in hand and exchange ideas and discuss them and come up with programs that are smart and work. Whereas right now, I make suggestions. It's not always complied with the sheriff's department or Michigan City Police Department or any of the chiefs. Sometimes I can only offer suggestions, but I know with Andy, we're going to be able to sit down and really work it out and hash out some ideas that we can institute for this county going forward.
Great. Okay, Andy, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually the first prong of my my platform. It has been this whole time is reducing the recidivism. And John's exactly right. Working together with the prosecutor's office is key to that. The other thing that I've told people many times is that it's not me reinventing the wheel. There are programs out there we simply don't have in our county. And the examples I give is that Ivy Tech is inside the Elkhart County Jail. The Indiana, the IN2 work program is inside the St. Joe County Jail. Those are state funded programs that we simply need to bring into our facility, model after what they're doing. But similar to what John said, we can't, it doesn't make much sense to take somebody, put them in a cell, close the door after a year, open up the door, say, all right, see you later. And then shake our head when they come back after 3 months and say, well, I can't believe the person came back. These folks need a little bit of hope, and they need some kind of a skill to make them better than they were when they came in. And I truly believe we can do that. I'm a realist. Do I think we can fix every single person that comes through the door? Unfortunately, no. But I think we can definitely affect a lot of these folks' lives, give them the hope that they've never had, reduce that recidivism, and keep them from coming back to our facility.
Great. And so, John alluded to I think staff turnover, I think was the issue. And I'm wondering if there's some comment you can make on that.
Yeah, both in our jail and on the road side, our merit officers, we're currently down 6 officers. We have 2 applicants for 6 officers. I've been employed with the Sheriff's Department for 22 years, over half of my life. We have never been down 6 officers before. I'm hoping with this lit tax, and we're currently, our Major Cicero is working hard with the county council to hopefully get a significant raise that we can change the trajectory of where we're going with manpower. But John's absolutely right in, we have to cover calls and do the basics back in the jail before we can do anything else. And if we don't have the manpower to do those basics, unfortunately, we can't do the added programs.
And so you think it's a pay issue?
Yeah, I think there's you'll always have employees that leave for various reasons, but the large majority, I believe, is for pay. Absolutely, because it's so competitive right now. If you have the law enforcement academy, and this is not just Indiana, you can go anywhere in the country. Again, when I started 22 years ago, it would be hard to get hired at Michigan City Police Department. It was very hard to get hired at the Sheriff's Department. There were 12 applicants for 6 spots, or for 5 spots when I started. Part of those were grant spots. But now you could say that you want to be a police officer in any part of the country and go there and get hired. It's very competitive because of the pay.
Huh. Well, so, and are we paying less than other counties?
Oh yeah, we're well below. We're the lowest in the county and the lowest in for surrounding counties. And so it's hard to entice a young officer to stay here. But again, part of that, the other thing that we need to do, and touching on the recruiting and retention, is we need to have more of a footprint in places like the A.K. Smith Center and in Ivy Tech. Both of those are right here in our county. They have criminal justice programs. We need to be on a very intimate relationship with both of them so we can recruit people from our community, right? We need to bring people that live here, that represent the demographics of this county, both in our jail and on our road. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to partner with those organizations.
And is the local income tax that you mentioned, is that enough?
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Do you want me? I didn't know if you were directly at me or Randy.
Well,
I think
sorry.
it's an important start. One of the significant things is that the biggest problem, there's a question there about Michigan City and the violence there. The biggest issue in Michigan City, the police department is down 27 officers.
Wow.
They when the Chief Campbell started, they had 100 officers. They got 73 now. So, it's very hard, as Andy was just saying, doing the basic, just covering the basics, then instead of then having, a crime focused on violent crime. There used to be able to do violent crime and have different programs or different, patrols, or people would be assigned to this specifically to focus on those areas where there's violent crime going on. We do have violent crime. And the whole issue with the permitless carry is a tough one for police officers. I was against it. My opponent was all over me. Oh, he doesn't believe in constitutional carry. And I'm like, listen, my dad had a huge gun collection. I learned to shoot when I was 4 and 5, and I shot fully automatic machine guns. But I respect the right to carry arms. But there are people that should not have guns. Your violent offenders, your violent felons. There's now, the way this law goes, it's convoluted. We have people under federal law who we stop them for like an OWI. Or for instance, that they're using drugs, or a drug user, abuser. Under federal law, they're not permitted to carry a gun. But that's not a crime under Indiana law, because they don't have they're not convicted or whatever. They don't fall into prohibited status. And so now we have people whose guns are being confiscated because it's a violation of federal law, and the Michigan City Police Department is doing it. But judges are ordering these guns back into these people's hands. And guess what? Some of these guns, I said it first thing, these guns are going to be used. Someone's going to die as a result, that we cannot no longer charge them with a misdemeanor, failure to have a permit. And it's just a simple rule. But, this is the problem. And I'm not a politician, but, when you look at this is the problem of having a supermajority. You already see it. There's some motivation here by the Democrats, but it's something I've decried. I've tried to get them to do reasonable things and raise some offenses on reckless homicide, because when someone dies and they have no prior record and they kill someone through a reckless homicide, their sentence is 3 years. So they may have killed someone, may not be murder technically, but it's a reckless act. So when you take a life, it's 3 years, but yet we're charging people with drugs and that are higher, level 2 felonies, level 3 felonies. So they're 3 or 4 classes above that. I don't agree with it. I just, so I've had these arguments with our senator and our on the Republican side, the legislative side, with them. Every time I see them, I will talk to them about this. So
Good.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. And just to touch on that again, I think we need to have, the permits. I don't think we need to charge people some exorbitant amount where we're, funding the state by getting gun permits. I don't think we need to make it so it's,
Well, it was already free.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to put it so it's a hardship on people, where we're charging a bunch of money for a permit, but we absolutely need to have a permit.
Yeah. Okay. Dahlia, do you have another question?
Sure. It says, if elected sheriff, how will you work to ensure people with mental illness are tended to, or just dealing with the mentally ill?
So, yeah, go ahead, Andy. Yeah.
Yeah, another good question. Something that, I've already been working on, even where I am now. with places like the Swanson Center. We have a countywide mental health team that John Lake is also a part of and sits on with Rainey Novak is the one that kind of organized that. Dahlia is part of that. And we discussed some of the issues, trying to come up because the problem is a community problem. It's not the sheriff's department problem or the prosecutor's problem or Michigan City problem or LaPorte problem. It's simply a community problem that we all need to come up with some solutions for. I'm confident that two things. One, an increased partnership with the Swanson Center. They've been on board at some of these meetings or at all these meetings, providing some resources. And then we have some CIT training, which is like mental health training. We're going to send 19 deputies to that in January through a grant that one of our young supervisors, James Lear, worked on, that will provide. It's a tough class, but it's for law enforcement officers. It's a 40-hour class where we're going to provide them with specialized training to provide better resources for people that are having a mental health crisis, instead of kind of now it's like a rubber stamp thing. So they'll be on each of our shifts. We're going to divide it up between all the shifts. So we have people, the idea is to have somebody on duty all the time that has this training. So when a call comes out of somebody that's having that mental health crisis, they would respond and specifically take care of that individual.
Excellent. So John, would you like to comment on that question as well?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this before, but, the mental health aspect, when a person has the mental health issue and they're not getting treatment or they fail to take their medication, now they commit a crime, and that's where we get into this situation. What do we do? A lot of your homeless have mental illnesses. So that's why when one of the first things I did, and one of my promises, my campaign promises from 4 years ago, was that I want to start a mental health court. I thought it was very, very important. I saw the issues as a deputy prosecutor for 25 years of what that does and how it leads to it. And I had tried a murder case where the person had mental illness and killed his brother because he wasn't getting treatment. No one was checking on him. So that was something that we, I went to several judges, because you need a judge. I can't just start my own court. And I need a judge to be able to do that. And so Judge Alavizo stepped up and he wanted to do a juvenile court first. And I agreed with him. I said that's a great place to start. Let's start with a juvenile justice system. And Mary took over that ball and ran with it, and she's been working on it. And like I said, they've been up and working for 2 years now and have changed lives. It's confidential because it's juvenile, but I can just tell you I've gone to some of the graduations, and to see a student who was getting Fs and was going to flunk out at age 16, turn their life around within a matter of 1 school year through the help of this mental health court, where they started getting A's and B's and went to college. And it gives them some direction. It's a really, really powerful thing. So now that we're waiting for that to be certified, you have to wait 2 years for certification of the court, make sure you're doing it correctly, show some results. Within 2 months, I think January is when December is a 2-year period. They're seeking certification from the Supreme Court. Once they get that certification, we're now going to start a mental health adult court. And so then we're going to identify these people who are in the jail, who have, issues, who've committed, misdemeanors, that we can then get them treatment, get them mental health, and follow them through to keep them out of the criminal justice system.
Excellent. That's terrific. Okay, Dahlia, do you have more questions?
Yes, indeed.
All
Here's
right,
the next
great.
question. In your role, how can you encourage law enforcement staff to demonstrate greater sensitivity towards marginalized groups, people of color, LGBTQ+, people with disabilities, among others?
All right, Andy, why don't you start on that one?
Yeah, good question. Part of that is training, obviously, and there's a huge focus on law enforcement training across the board on all topics because of some of the stuff that we've seen across the country in the last couple of years. So that's one of the things that I want to expand on is mandatory. When we do our mandatory in-service training, that part of that is stuff like sensitivity training and training on de-escalation. The other way that we can help with that is to promote folks from those groups to apply to the sheriff's department. What better way than to have those folks join the ranks of our jail division and our civil division and our merit division. But again, this is basically year of the employee part 2, right across the country. People aren't necessarily coming to us for a job. We need to go to them. We need to go into those communities, into those groups, and promote our department using what we already have to get folks to come work for us.
So that's really an interesting response. I guess, you know, the notion that there's a place in criminal justice for marginalized community members. Maybe you could be a little more specific about how you see, you know, someone perhaps from the transgender community, you know, working in your jail, working with your staff.
I think they would work, you know, fine. And, you know, I don't think we can, you know, say that we're not going to, you know, hire somebody that has, that is trans or that is gay or that is a lesbian. I really think that we need to embrace that stuff, and all groups, whether it's, you know, racial groups. But again, the best way to do that is through our own employees being our recruiters for that.
And you're, I mean, feeling confident about that as a,
Oh
as
yeah,
a project? Yeah.
I think I really think that we need to do so. All this kind of is on the same heels of making sure or doing a better job of having people from our community, from our county working for us. Because I tell people, you know, historically we've hired people that have come from other parts of the state. And although they do a good job when they're here, one, they don't stay long, right? They wait for an opportunity for where they're from. But you're more likely to be, you know, more passionate about your job. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
When it's from a community where you're from. You know, your relatives live here, your friends live here. So you go out and you have a sense of pride because you're protecting folks, you know, from your background, from your community. But the demographics of our department in any organization, not just our department, but any organization, the demographics need to match the demographics of your community. But the best way to do that is our people are our best recruiters. And I think we go out and again, we partner with places with Ivy Tech and AK Smith, where folks are already showing an interest. They've signed up for these classes in criminal justice. We need to embrace that.
Terrific. And what do you have any, you know, estimate on the breakdown of the staff now as far as gender, race?
You know, that's a good question. I wouldn't have like to be able to put a number on it. But I really don't think that we're necessarily in a position where we are equal to the demographic breakdown of the county. But again, I think modern policing, you know, the sheriff's department was fortunate for probably my first 18 years to constantly have applications. We always had people coming down here and applying. So we kind of took that for granted. We said, well, we don't need to go out into the community, right? The folks are coming to us. Well, you know, like I said, the last 2 or 3 years, it's year of the employee and people aren't coming to us. We need to simply go to them.
Right. Excellent. Well, it's great to hear your commitment to, you know, to reaching out to all the communities. So John, you have some comment on that as well?
I do. I think, first of all, the encouragement starts at the top, and the way you exhibit yourself or how you act towards other people is number one. And so, you know, Mary and I think are very open and accepting of anyone, regardless of race, religion, you know, far left, far right. It doesn't matter. That's my job, is to be nonpartisan, is to be in the middle, you know, and not judge someone based on who they are. And that's especially for people who have criminal records or prior records, because they can be victims too. And I think one of the most important things that I've done, number one, well, on the juvenile side, Mary works out with the JDI, which is making sure that we're not overly criminalizing or institutionalizing young Black males or females. And that's something that has been worked on, that she's been working on for the last 3 years. So that's an important issue. As far as my office, if you come in our office, we have people of color. We're subject to whoever applies, obviously. But the last hire we had was an African American, our victim advocate. Through our victim advocates, overwhelmingly, and I don't know. I really don't pay attention to people's sexual orientation at work. I don't ask them about it. It's not something I really affects me one way or the other. I just treat them as a person. But the overwhelming majority of people in our office are female. I think we only had, out of 43 employees, I think 35 are women. So I'm very, and one of the things that I did and I made sure of is I ended the gender pay gap in our office. There was a gender pay gap for deputy prosecutors that, females or women were being paid less than men doing the same level work. And I just thought that was absolutely wrong. So that as soon as I could, I evened that out through the budget. And, it's not easy because the council doesn't give you extra money to make things up, but we were able to accomplish it as of 2020. The other thing is in the sexual assault response team that we created a regional one through that, it's trauma informed. So you have to accept it. We're very open to whoever the victim is. You don't judge the victim. And we have too much of that in society where, women who are assaulted are quickly, assumed, oh, what was she wearing? Was she drinking? Was she doing drugs? And they blame the victim. We don't do that because when consent's not in the room, it's a crime and we're going to charge those. I'm very, very aggressive about that, of making sure that we treat people appropriately and that we're not judging them on what their race or religion or their beliefs are, but what the actions were of someone else, and that we treat them appropriately as far as what is trauma-informed investigation techniques, and they don't judge them. You just accept them where they're at, and you try and help them move along the way. So I think those are some of the things that I've tried to do in my work and role as prosecutor.
Excellent. Wow, that's wonderful to hear. Okay, so we're running out of time. Dahlia, let's see, maybe one more question. Pick a good one, Dahlia.
Okay, so here's a question. With such a shortage, and I believe it's in being able to hire enough officers, what can you do to keep people who are associated with white supremacist groups, and I'll add other hate groups, from infiltrating the police force? So basically, what's your screening process?
Good question. So we do a pretty in-depth background of individuals that work for us. Is everything foolproof? I would be lying if I told you it was 100%, because, like anywhere else, people can sometimes fly under the radar. However, the background process to get hired at the sheriff's department, and frankly, any police department, is pretty regimented between mental health screenings and in-depth background that includes everything from your finances to character checks and stuff like that. Social media checks is a big thing. So I really think that our department has done and will continue to do a really good job on ensuring the folks that we employ are of good moral character and set that standard high. I mean, we tell people, as a policeman, you're America's finest. We have to hold that standard, and that's how we do that.
So John, I don't know if you have a comment on that or not. If not, we can just move along to your, to kind of a closing statement sort of thing. But if you do, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's really directed more at the police forces, I believe. I mean, obviously, we do background checks and that, and obviously, if there's someone that I find is doing unacceptable behavior or part of a hate group in my office, and I believe it's affecting their ability to do their work, they're not going to be working for me very long. So that's what I would do. But it's a little bit different. Because I hire so many women, it's not that big of an issue in my office, I think. So.
All right, great. Okay, so so why don't we go ahead with you, John? And so just, you know, a little wrap up and tell people how they can reach you, what you need for your campaign, how people can help you.
Sure. I think, well, I think the biggest thing that everyone can help is to tell people to go out and vote and take people to the polls. That's your big thing that you can do. As far as reaching me, I'm available through Facebook, my Facebook page, Lake for Prosecutor. So it's pretty easy to find.
Lake for Prosecutor. Okay.
Yep, Lake for Prosecutor. Just you Google me. I mean, there's a couple of pages. There's my prosecutor page, and there's Lake for Prosecutor or election, whatever it's called. But I think the big thing that people need to understand is there's a big difference between me and my opponent. As I said, he has no experience whatsoever. He has been banned from. He said some pretty interesting things on Facebook when he didn't ban me from his page or looking at his page back in May. But he had he's been banned from some Facebook groups, the biggest ones in LaPorte County, because of controversial things he said and just how he's acted. Anybody who's against him, he will just block or whatever. So I think you just have to understand there's a big difference between me and him, and what's going to happen if he were to win this election. It would be first of all, the majority of my staff would not remain. They would go elsewhere, or he's already said that he'd fire people. But I think what I'm running on is the promises I made 4 years ago. That I ran because of my experience, my integrity, and my leadership. And I had said that back then there was a big turnover in the office. We're going to go backwards if this guy wins. And we had a real big revolving door where 29 people went through the office within the span of 3 years, and there's only 43 employees, and 14 of those were prosecutors, deputy prosecutors that came and went. So you're going to have that same type of instability. But I promised that I'd bring leadership and stability to the office, and I did that. I promised that I would work with law enforcement and prosecute the cases they presented that had probable cause. I've done that. I said, again, what I've already talked about, the mental health court, that I said I'd start one. I did that. I said that I would restart the child fatality review team. I did that. And I said that I would reform the sexual assault response team, which I did. And we've had a lot of successes. I think one of the most significant ones, I don't have time to go through everything that we've done, but I think just a couple of things that people want to know, like what have we done as far as crime goes? Crime was rising between 2016 and 2018, and it continued to rise just a little bit into 2019. And I had said one of the things, the issues was the prior election was that the prior prosecutor was not filing he was about 20%. His filings went down 20%, but crime was going up. I said that I was going to file those cases that he was not filing. We did that. So our filings went up about 17 to 20% in 2019. Crime kind of continued to rise, but since then it's down 12% overall this year. And one of the most significant things is that as far as we didn't really talk about drugs, but I was very aggressive when Andy was the head of the drug task force, filing the dealing, causing death cases. I was the first prosecutor to do that in the state of Indiana, to hold them accountable. We're filing and pursuing those drug cases all the time. But as significantly, in the span of child molesting cases, we have 16 defendants in the last 3 years who we've convicted are now serving more than 30 years in the Indiana Department of Correction. So I'm very proud of the work that my office has done. I look forward to, and I've been endorsed by the FOP, I've been endorsed by unions, and I'd ask for their support and their vote beginning October 12th through November 8th. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, thanks, John. All right, Andy. So yeah, again, tell us what you need for your campaign. How can people reach you? How can they help you?
Yep, absolutely. They can reach me at on my cell phone, 219-608-9529, hynekforsheriff.com. Here's my website, or any of the Facebook, my Facebook page, both my campaign and my personal one. And the other thing is I vow to be that accessible once elected too, which I think is huge for the sheriff. People need to be able to come, reach out to their elected sheriff. They have a concern in their neighborhood and be able to come and try to show up at the office, whatever that takes. My platform is pretty simple, that it's reducing recidivism and focusing on mental health and an educational approach to the heroin epidemic, all things that I'm very, very passionate about. And we're going to continue to work hard on once elected. Like John said, we need people to make sure they get out there and vote. And if you have sign locations, also let us know that. Again, 219-608-9529.
And what's your website?
HynekForSheriff.com.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, thank you, both of you. And I want to, let's see, I just want to take a moment to talk about voting, because I want to make sure that that we're all on the same page. So, okay, voter registration ends on October 11th. Early voting starts on October 12th. It will be at the courthouses, I think, both LaPorte and Michigan City courthouses, probably 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. I think it's just the last 2 Saturdays of October before the election. That will be 8 to 3. So I believe that's, so it's the last 2 Saturdays before election day on November 8th. And I want to ask people to think about your voting plan and write it down. Write down what your voting plan is. When are you going to vote? Where are you going to vote? How are you going to get there? Do you need an absentee ballot? Those are, you can go online and request those. Those are due on October 27th, I believe. And of course must be returned. The ballot must be returned by November 7th. So write it down, and the place you go to find your polling place, to find the dates, to find the locations, to request a ballot, to see who's on your ballot is indianavoters.com. You can do all of those things at that one website. So so please, please, please write down your voting plan. And ask your friends to write down their voting plan. This is one of the most effective ways that we found to really get people to actually vote, is to write down your plan. So, all right, great. Thank you so much. We're out of time. Thank you, John Lake, running for re-election for LaPorte County Prosecutor, and Andy Hynek, running for LaPorte County Sheriff. So terrific. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I really wish you both well. So, all right, thank you. And we'll close out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, Dahlia, you're the one.